Water levels low in winter could help, but Yorkshire Water say that could mean summer droughts. We'll be speaking to those behind the plans.
Also tonight, fire cruisers, paramedics.
Is this the future? Tonight, the fire engine that's also an ambulance. The changing face of the emergency services and the West Yorkshire Company behind it.
The Yorkshire University boss is earning twice as much as the Prime Minister. Find out who got a 15% pay increase. And we meet the musical prodigy from Ilkley, who will be playing with a full orchestra at the tender age of 12.
A chilly few days to come across Yorkshire, the risk even of a few wintry showers. Join me for that detailed forecast.
Good evening, thank you for joining us. New plans for flood defences in the Calder Valley have run into opposition from Yorkshire Water. The Environment Agency wants the company to keep its reservoirs half full, so there's spare capacity when heavy rain hits.
But Yorkshire Water fears the proposal could lead to water shortages in the spring and summer when demand is highest. The leader of Calderdale Council has called their position a nonsense. Spencer Stokes has this exclusive report.
On Boxing Day, the equivalent of 10 oil tankers of water flowed down the River Calder every second. A deluge unlike anything seen before. But what if some of that water had been held back before it reached Hebden Bridge? The Environment Agency are suggesting several reservoirs on nearby moors be used for that purpose. A complicated and controversial idea. Reservoirs like this one above Hebden Bridge weren't built to provide protection against flooding. They're here to store water, and at this time of year they're almost full to the top so that there's plenty of water for Yorkshire to drink during the summertime. What the Environment Agency are suggesting is that the water should be regularly drained off during the winter so that there's lots of spare capacity in the reservoir. Then, if there's heavy rain like we saw over Christmas time, there's somewhere for all that excess flood water to go to before it reaches towns like Hebden Bridge.
What we would look to do, if we were to take the option forward, would be to reserve a volume of water in those reservoirs to be used at a time when it's needed. So the time when the water is peaking through the centre of the town, we would then be able to fill those reservoirs just to take off those highest river levels through the centre.
The idea goes down well with Amy Plymley. Her clothing shop was flooded in 2012 and shut down for good. This time her cafe was hit and still hasn't reopened.
The speed of the water coming from the top of the hills into Hebden Bridge, that's what needs to be slowed down. We kind of need to keep it up there and distribute and slow it down into the town.
But you can't fight gravity, can you? The water wants to come downhill.
It will, but please can we just slow it down? Can we slow it down? Can we direct it somewhere else? Not to another town, obviously, to be flooded, but, you know, let's just slow it down. Let's do something up on the tops and let's not have it build up down here.
There are several reservoirs on the moors north of Hebden Bridge. All are owned by Yorkshire Water, an organisation that was scarred by the 1995 drought. So they're uneasy about emptying water out.
If we were to change the use of those reservoirs, then clearly it's very complicated. You know, as we say, they traditionally recharge during the autumn and the winter to make sure that we have enough water for local communities in the spring and summer. You know, nowhere has it been felt more acute than in West Yorkshire in the past when we haven't got that supply and demand balance right.
It's something we definitely think they should be looking at seriously. We understand it is done in other parts of the country. It was obviously a nonsense that when we had the rain over Boxing Day, the reservoirs were full and huge amounts of water were simply pouring from them into the rivers.
In total, the Environment Agency wants to spend £15 million in Hebden Bridge. Flood walls along the river are also planned. But it's up here where the water starts its journey and where some think a partial solution to flooding can be found.
Well, Spencer's in Hebden Bridge tonight. Spencer, £15 million is an awful lot of money. Where's it going to come from?
Well, from talking to Calderdale Council today, Phil, it seems that £7 million has already been found. That would, of course, leave an £8 million funding gap. and both Calderdale Council and the Environment Agency will be looking to the government to fill that gap. What will happen in the autumn of this year is that DEFRA, the Department of the Environment, will make an announcement about a flood protection plan for the whole of the Calder Valley, and wrapped up in that there could be a funding announcement for Hebden Bridge that may allow flood walls to be built here or even some work on the reservoirs. But the amount of money announced will dictate exactly what could be done.
You've been getting reaction today in Hebden Bridge. What do people feel about reservoirs being used?
Well, from talking to lots of people in the town, it feels that everybody really is an expert on flood protection, flood prevention measures, what should be done. I think that's totally understandable when people who have homes and businesses here have lived through several floods over the past 4 or 5 years. They all know how you, or think they know how you prevent water from reaching their particular property. I've been talking particularly to Barry Greenwood from the Upper Calder Valley Flood Protection Group, and he actually says that the solution should be more simple. It's not about using reservoirs or even building walls up at this river here, but simply cleaning the rivers up, emptying them out.
What we need to do is exactly what you can see here on the river itself. There's been a deluge of rubble and everything coming down the river. It's gone up by 14 inches as the riverbed since the Boxing Day, and they haven't done anything to clear it. And that's where the money needs to be spent. We've got to allow the water to flow down to the flood fields at Brealey, for instance. It can't get into there because it doesn't get that far. It backs up and it turns into the streets.
Now, that river clearing or dredging may appear like a less costly option, but the Environment Agency say the problem is you have to do it every year. It's a repetitive process, and over a series of years, those costs begin to mount up. What does seem clear today is that there is no simple solution, and whatever you do doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will prevent flooding here in Hebden Bridge.
OK, Spencer Stokes live in Hebden Bridge. Thank you very much.
A new vehicle designed by a Yorkshire company could see fire crews working as ambulance staff when they arrive at an emergency in future.